I'm Sarah Mitchell, 28, and I've been the top sales rep at Premier Auto Solutions for 3 years running. Last month, I earned a $15,000 bonus that would finally let me move out of my cramped studio apartment. But when I went to collect it, my boss Marcus casually mentioned he borrowed it to surprise his wife with a brand new BMW for their anniversary. He promised to pay me back eventually, with that smug smile I'd grown to hate. What Marcus didn't know was that I had connections in the repo business from my previous job, and his wife's shiny new car was about to become the centerpiece of the most unforgettable anniversary dinner they'd ever have. Like, if you've ever had a boss who thought your hard work was their personal piggy bank. Before we jump back in, tell me where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Like this video if you've ever had your entire life turned upside down by a single phone call. My alarm buzzed at 6:15 a.m., same as it had every weekday for the past 3 years. I rolled out of my Murphy bed in my 400 square foot studio apartment, stepping carefully around the boxes I'd optimistically bought last month for my anticipated move. The Employee of the Month certificates lined my tiny desk, 12 of them from the past 3 years. Each one a testament to my dedication to Premier Auto Solutions. I joined the company straight out of my previous job at Metro Recovery Services, eager to leave the repo business behind for something more stable. Marcus Henderson had hired me with promises of unlimited earning potential and growth opportunities. "You're exactly what we need," he'd said during my interview. "Someone hungry and willing to work hard." And work hard I did. My first year, I closed $2.3 million in sales. Year 2, $2.8 million. This past year, I'd shattered every record with $3.2 million, consistently outperforming every other rep by at least 40%. The numbers didn't lie, they were all there in my meticulously maintained performance spreadsheet. Color-coded and updated weekly. My morning coffee routine was sacred. I'd grind the beans. I splurged on the one luxury. I allowed myself and sit at my fold-down table, reviewing my sales pipeline for the day. The $15,000 bonus I'd earned represented 15% of my Q4 commission structure, clearly outlined in my employment contract. It wasn't a gift or favor. It was money I'd earned through late nights, weekend calls, and turning every lead into a closed deal. That bonus meant everything to me. I'd already put down a deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, place with actual separated rooms, a real kitchen, and windows that didn't face a brick wall. For the first time in my adult life, I'd have space to breathe, to think, to maybe even date someone without being embarrassed about where I lived. Drive to work took me past the luxury car dealership where I'd started noticing more BMWs lately. Marcus lived in the hills, in a house I'd driven past once out of curiosity. His mortgage alone probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Yet somehow he always seemed to be struggling financially, constantly complaining about his expenses and his wife's spending habits. At Premier Auto Solutions, I had my own cubicle in the sales pit, a privilege earned through performance. Newer reps shared desks or worked from folding tables. My space was organized like a command center, dual monitors, a high-end headset I bought myself, and those 12 Employee of the Month certificates arranged perfectly on my partition wall. Everyone knew I was the top performer. Other reps would ask for my advice, and I always shared freely. I believed in lifting others up, not viewing them as competition. The company made enough money that there was room for everyone to succeed, or so I thought. Marcus would parade me in front of potential new hires, pointing to my sales numbers and certificates. "This is what success looks like here," he'd say. "Sarah's our superstar." But when it came time for actual rewards, promotions, raises, or even basic respect, there was always an excuse. "Budget constraints," he'd say, or "we need to see continued performance." I'd swallowed every disappointment, believing that hard work would eventually pay off. I'd stayed late when others left early, taken calls during my lunch breaks, and never, complained about the outdated CRM system or the broken coffee machine in the break room. I was the perfect employee, and I genuinely believed that my dedication would be rewarded. The $15,000 bonus was supposed to be my validation, proof that my sacrifices hadn't been in vain. I'd earned it fair and square, documented every sale that contributed to it, and waited patiently for the quarterly bonus distribution date. Little did I know that Marcus had other plans for my hard-earned money. The bonus payment schedule was clear as day. Third Friday of January, direct deposit by 3 p.m. I had the official company document printed and highlighted, tucked neatly in my employee handbook. At 3:15 p.m., I checked my bank account. Nothing. At 4 p.m., still nothing. By 4:30, I knew I needed to talk to Marcus. His corner office was a shrine to his ego golf trophies, expensive art, and photos of him with various luxury cars. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who sold cars for a living seemed to acquire a new one every few months. I knocked on his doorframe, my employee handbook tucked under my arm. "Sarah, come in, come in. What can I do for you?" Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, that familiar smug expression already forming on his face. "Hi, Marcus. I'm here about my Q4 bonus. The payment schedule shows it should have been deposited by now, but I haven't received it yet." I kept my voice professional, giving him the benefit of the doubt that this was simply an oversight. Marcus's expression shifted slightly, and he cleared his throat. "Ah, yes, about that. We had a little cash flow issue this quarter. Don't worry though, you'll get your money." Cash flow issue? I felt my stomach drop. "Marcus, this is my earned commission. It's not discretionary, it's part of my contract." He waved his hand dismissively. "Look, Sarah, I know you're eager to get paid, but sometimes business requires flexibility. I actually had to borrow that money temporarily for something important." The word borrow hit me like a physical blow. "Borrow? You borrowed my bonus money?" "Just temporarily," he said, that smug smile spreading wider. "My wife's been after me for months about getting her a new car. Our anniversary is coming up, and you know how women get about these things. I found this gorgeous BMW fully loaded. Leather interior, all the bells and whistles. Cost exactly $15,000. Perfect timing, really." I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. "You used my bonus money to buy your wife a car." "I borrowed it," he corrected, as if the semantics made it acceptable. "And I'll pay you back eventually." "Look, Sarah, you're young. You're single. You don't have the pressures I have. My wife has been incredibly patient with my long hours and business demands. She deserves something nice, eventually." My voice was barely a whisper. "Marcus, I need that money. I've put a deposit down on an apartment. I have commitments based on earning that bonus." He leaned forward, his tone becoming condescending. "Sarah, you need to understand how business works. Sometimes we all have to make sacrifices for the greater good. Your bonus will come, but right now, I need you to be a team player." "Team player?" I stood up, my hands shaking with rage. "I've been nothing but a team player for 3 years. I've earned every dollar of that bonus. This isn't about team playing, this is theft." Marcus's friendly facade cracked. "Careful, Sarah. That's a strong word. I'm your boss, and I'm telling you that your payment will be delayed. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to find another job." The threat hung in the air between us. I realized in that moment that this wasn't an oversight or a temporary cash flow problem. This was Marcus exercising what he believed was his right to my labor, my success, my money. He'd stolen from me as casually as taking a pen from the supply closet. "When will I be paid?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fury building inside me. "I don't know. A few months, maybe. After the car payments settle in. Look, it's not like you're going to starve. You make good money here." I looked at the bonus payment schedule in my hand, then at Marcus's smug face. "This document says the bonus is due today. It's in my contract." "Contracts are just pieces of paper, Sarah. What matters is reality. And the reality is that I needed that money for something more important than your little apartment upgrade. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to tell him exactly what I thought of his theft and his arrogance. Instead, I folded the payment schedule carefully and tucked it back into my handbook. I see, I said quietly. I'm glad you understand. You're a smart girl, Sarah. That's why you're so successful here. Now, let's focus on next quarter's goals. I have some aggressive targets I want to discuss with you. I nodded and turned to leave, my mind already racing. As I reached the door, Marcus called out, "Oh, and Sarah. I'd appreciate it if you kept this conversation between us. No need to worry the other reps about temporary cash flow issues." I walked back to my cubicle in a daze, Marcus's words echoing in my head. Eventually. Team player, something more important. Each phrase was a slap in the face, a reminder that to him, I wasn't a person with needs and commitments, I was just a resource to be exploited. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, staring at the boxes I packed for my move, and something fundamental shifted inside me. Marcus had made a critical error in his calculation. He'd assumed I was helpless, that I'd accept his theft because I needed the job. What he didn't know was that I had skills and connections he'd never imagined. And I was about to remind him that every action has consequences. That evening, I spread my bank statements across my fold-down table like evidence at a crime scene. The numbers told a story I'd been trying to ignore for months. Despite generating millions in revenue for Premier Auto Solutions, despite being their top performer for 3 consecutive years, I was living paycheck to paycheck. My checking account showed $847.23. My savings account, which should have grown substantially with my commission earnings, held a pathetic $2,156. The stark reality hit me. Marcus had been systematically underpaying me for years. Those budget constraints, he mentioned whenever I asked for a raise, weren't budget constraints at all. They were wealth redistribution. Moving money from my pocket to his. I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet I'd been maintaining religiously since my Metro Recovery Services days. Old habits die hard, and documentation had saved my skin more than once in the repo world. My sales figures were meticulously recorded. Every lead, every conversion, every commission percentage, every bonus calculation. The numbers didn't lie, even when people did. Metro Recovery Services. I hadn't thought about that job in months, but suddenly it felt like a lifetime had been leading to this moment. I'd spent 2 years there, learning the ins and outs of asset recovery, developing relationships with tow truck operators, legal processors, and skip tracers. Most importantly, I'd learned that people who think they're untouchable often have the most to lose. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake Morrison, my former colleague, and one of the best repo men in the city. "Haven't heard from you in forever. How's the fancy sales job treating you?" Jake's timing was eerily perfect. I stared at his message for several minutes before responding. "Could be better. You still in the business?" "Are you kidding? Business is booming. Rich people buying cars they can't afford, thinking their fancy addresses make them judgment-proof. Want to grab a beer sometime? I've got stories." I set the phone down and walked to my tiny window, looking out at the brick wall that had been my view for 3 years. Marcus lived in a world where he could casually steal $15,000 and consider it borrowing. He existed in a bubble of privilege where other people's labor was his personal ATM, but bubbles have a tendency to burst. My laptop screen still glowed with my performance data. I started cross-referencing my numbers with company reports I'd seen during quarterly meetings. The picture that emerged made my stomach turn. Marcus had been skimming from multiple revenue streams, not just my bonus. He'd restructured commission tiers to reduce payouts, delayed bonus payments to earn interest on the float, and consistently underreported individual achievements to minimize recognition bonuses. Wasn't his only victim, I was just his most profitable one. A memory surfaced from my Metro Recovery Services training. Our supervisor, a grizzled veteran named Rodriguez, had drilled one principle into us. Every asset can be recovered if you have the right documentation and the legal authority. Rich people think their money makes them untouchable, but debt is debt, and justice is justice. Marcus's pattern was becoming clear. He'd done this before, probably multiple times. The casual way he'd mentioned borrowing my money suggested this was standard operating procedure for him. He'd identified high performers, exploited their dedication, and counted on their financial dependents to keep them compliant. But I wasn't just any employee. I had skills he didn't know about, connections he couldn't imagine, and most importantly, I had documentation that would hold up in court. Every text message, every email, every performance review was stored and backed up. My employment contract was crystal clear about bonus structures and payment schedules. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Jake's number. Then I opened my laptop and began researching BMW dealerships in the area, cross-referencing them with credit reporting databases I still had access to from my Metro recovery days. Thought he was dealing with a helpless employee who would accept his theft because she needed the job. He was about to learn that he'd stolen from someone who knew exactly how to take things back. The BMW he'd bought with my money wasn't just a car, it was evidence. And unlike cash, cars could be tracked, located, and legally recovered under the right circumstances. I spent the next 2 hours researching vehicle identification databases, lien procedures, and asset recovery laws. By midnight, I had a plan forming. Marcus had made a critical error in his arrogance. He'd assumed I was powerless, that I'd accept his explanation and wait patiently for my money. What he didn't understand was that I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to take what's rightfully yours. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jake. Seriously though, if you ever want to get back into recovery work, I could use someone with your skills. The money's better than you'd think. I smiled for the first time in days. The money might be better, but right now, I wasn't interested in making money. I was interested in recovering what was already mine. And I knew exactly who to call for help. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and began what I privately called Operation Documentation. My sales commission records became my Bible. Every transaction, every percentage, every payment date meticulously recorded and cross-referenced with company policy. I'd learned at Metro Recovery that a case was only as strong as its paper trail, and I intended to build an airtight case. During my lunch break, I casually struck up conversations with other sales reps. What I discovered made my blood boil and my resolve strengthen. Marcus's theft wasn't an isolated incident. It was a systematic pattern of exploitation. Yeah, he delayed my bonus last quarter too, admitted Jennifer. A newer rep who'd been struggling to make rent said something about cash flow issues, but then he shows up the next week with a new Rolex. Tom, who'd been there almost as long as I had, shook his head grimly. He restructured my commission structure midway through Q3, retroactively, said it was to align with company goals, but it cost me about $3,000. Each conversation revealed another piece of Marcus's con game. He'd been running Premier Auto Solutions like his personal piggy bank, manipulating pay structures, delaying payments, and pocketing the difference. The man was a textbook embezzler, and we were his victims. I spent my afternoon breaks researching Marcus's lifestyle, using social media and public records to piece together his financial picture. His wife's Instagram was a goldmine of information, constant posts about expensive dinners, luxury vacations, and designer purchases. Her most recent post showed her admiring a shiny new BMW in their driveway, captioned, "Early anniversary surprise. From my amazing husband, #blessed number BMW, #anniversary love." The car was gorgeous midnight blue with cream leather interior. Exactly the kind of vehicle that would cost $15,000 used or as a down payment on a lease. But what really caught my attention was the dealership's temporary tag visible in the photo. Bavarian Motors, the high-end BMW dealership across town. I made a mental note and continued my research. Marcus's mortgage records showed he was leveraged to the hilt. His house was worth about $800,000, but he owed $750,000 on it. His credit report, which I accessed through connections I'd maintained from my recovery days, revealed a pattern of living beyond his means. Multiple credit cards, a boat loan, and 2 car payments. The man was drowning in debt while stealing from his employees to maintain his lifestyle. At 3 p.m., I called Jake from my car in the parking lot. "Sarah, I was wondering when you'd call back." "What's going on? I need to meet with you." "Are you free?" "After work. I have a situation that might interest you." Jake's voice sharpened with professional curiosity. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where someone stole money from me and used it to buy a car. The kind where I have documentation proving the theft and a legitimate claim to the asset." There was a pause. "You know I'm not a lawyer, right?" "I don't need a lawyer yet. I need someone who understands asset recovery and can help me explore my options. Can we meet?" "Absolutely." Rico's bar, 6 o'clock. "And Sarah, bring your documentation." I spent the rest of the afternoon creating a comprehensive file. Employment contract, bonus payment schedule, performance records, bank statements, and screenshots of Marcus's wife's social media posts. I even included a printout of the BMW's VIN number, which I'd obtained through a contact at the DMV. The picture that emerged was crystal clear. Marcus Henderson had stolen $15,000 from me and used it to purchase a BMW for his wife. The theft was documented, the asset was identifiable, and I had legitimate grounds for recovery. All I needed was the right approach. At Rico's bar, Jake listened intently as I laid out the entire situation. He was a big guy, ex-military, with the kind of calm demeanor that came from years of dealing with people who didn't want to give up their cars. But he was also smart. He'd worked his way through business school while repoing cars and understood both the legal and practical aspects of asset recovery. "This is actually pretty straightforward," he said after reviewing my documentation. "You have a legitimate debt money he owes you. You have proof that he used that specific money to purchase an asset. In most states, that creates what's called a constructive trust over the asset, meaning that car legally belongs to you until he pays back what he stole. The trick is executing the recovery legally and safely." Jake pulled out his phone and showed me photos of his current equipment, a flatbed tow truck, various electronic devices, and a folder full of legal forms. "The key is having the right paperwork. We need to establish your legal claim to the asset, file the proper notices, and execute the recovery according to state law." "What about his wife? She doesn't know the money was stolen." "Doesn't matter. She's not a bona fide purchaser if the money used to buy the car was stolen. She has no legal claim superior to yours." I felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous energy. "So we can actually do this. We can do this." "But Sarah, are you sure this is the route you want to take? Once we repo that car, there's no going back. This becomes a legal matter, and Marcus will know exactly who was responsible." I thought about my cramped studio apartment, my delayed bonus, my 3 years of exploitation. I thought about Jennifer struggling to make rent, and Tom losing thousands to Marcus's manipulation. I thought about Marcus's smug smile and his casual theft of my hard-earned money. "I'm sure," I said, "but I want to make sure we do this right. I want maximum impact with minimal legal risk." Jake grinned. "Then we need to plan this carefully. When's their anniversary?" I checked my phone. "Next Friday." "Why?" "Because timing is everything in this business. And if we're going to make a statement, we might as well make it memorable." The BMW purchase receipt was my smoking gun. Jake had connections everywhere, including a friend who worked at Bavarian Motors. Within 24 hours, I had a copy of the sales documentation showing that Marcus had paid exactly $15,000, cash down on a certified pre-owned 2022 BMW 330i, the exact amount of my stolen bonus, down to the penny. The transaction date was 3 days after my bonus was supposed to be deposited. The coincidence was so perfect it made me laugh bitterly. Marcus hadn't even tried to hide his theft, he'd used my money immediately, probably assuming I'd never have the resources or knowledge to trace it. His wife's social media provided a detailed timeline of their anniversary preparations. She'd been posting about their upcoming celebration for weeks, sharing photos of her outfit planning, restaurant reservations at Chez Laurent, the most expensive French restaurant in the city, and her excitement about spending their special day together. 10 years of marriage deserves the perfect celebration, she'd written in one post, including a photo of their dinner reservation confirmation for Friday at 8 p.m. My husband has been planning the most romantic evening, and I can't wait to see what surprises he has in store. #anniversary week, #romance, #blessed. The irony was nauseating. She was celebrating romance funded by theft, planning a perfect evening built on my financial devastation. But her detailed social media documentation was exactly what I needed for operational planning. I spent my lunch breaks conducting surveillance, learning their routines and confirming the BMW's regular parking locations. Marcus drove his own car to work, a leased Mercedes, while his wife used the BMW for her daily activities. She had a predictable schedule: yoga classes Monday and Wednesday mornings, grocery shopping Tuesday afternoons, and dinner with friends Thursday evenings. The BMW was always parked in the same spot at Chez Laurent when she went there for her weekly wine and gossip sessions with her social circle. The restaurant had valet parking, but she preferred to park her baby herself in the adjacent self-park lot where she could keep an eye on it. Jake and I met twice more that week to finalize our plan. He prepared all the necessary legal documentation: a demand letter establishing the debt, a notice of intent to recover assets, and a repossession order that would hold up in court. Everything was legally bulletproof. The beauty of this situation, Jake explained, is that we're not stealing anything. We're recovering an asset purchased with stolen funds. The law is completely on our side. But I was wrestling with unexpected emotions. Marcus's wife wasn't the enemy here. She was another victim of his deception. She had no idea her anniversary gift was purchased with stolen money. No clue that her husband was a thief who'd been systematically exploiting his employees for years. What if she's heartbroken? I asked Jake during our final planning session. What if this ruins their anniversary? Jake looked at me seriously. Sarah, let me ask you something. If you found out your spouse had been stealing from people to buy you gifts, would you want to know? Or would you rather live in ignorance while other people suffered for your comfort? The question hit home. If I were in her position, I'd want to know the truth, no matter how painful. Marcus's wife deserved to understand what kind of man she was married to, just like I'd deserve to understand what kind of boss I was working for. That evening, I drove past their house, a sprawling suburban mansion with perfectly manicured landscaping and a 3-car garage. The BMW sat in the driveway like a trophy, its midnight blue paint gleaming under the security lights. Looking at it, I felt a complex mixture of anger and satisfaction. That car represented everything wrong with Marcus's character: his entitlement, his theft, his casual dismissal of other people's financial needs. But it also represented something else: evidence, proof that actions have consequences, that stolen money creates recoverable assets, and that people who think they're above accountability can be brought down by their own arrogance. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sarah, need you to come in early tomorrow. We're having a team meeting about Q1 goals. Hope you're ready to hit the ground running. The casual tone, the assumption that I'd simply forgotten about my stolen bonus, the expectation that I'd continue performing at peak levels while he enjoyed the fruits of my labor, it all crystallized my resolve. Marcus had stolen from me not just financially, but emotionally. He'd taken my trust, my dedication, and my belief that hard work would be rewarded. Tomorrow, he would learn that stealing has consequences. I texted Jake, everything set for Friday? His response was immediate. Everything's ready. You sure about the timing? I looked at my bank account balance. then at the photos of Marcus's wife celebrating her upcoming anniversary with my stolen money. Positive, 8:30 p.m., Chez Laurent. Parking lot, perfect. They'll be so focused on their romantic dinner, they won't notice anything until it's too late. I spent that night organizing my documentation one final time, ensuring everything was perfect for what would inevitably become a legal matter. Employment contract, performance records, bonus payment schedule, bank statements, BMW purchase receipt, and social media screenshots. Everything. Marcus would need to see to understand exactly how thoroughly I documented his theft. Part of me hoped he'd simply pay me back and apologize when confronted with the evidence, but a bigger part of me knew that wouldn't happen. Marcus was too arrogant, too entitled, too convinced of his own superiority to admit wrongdoing. He'd made his choice when he stole my money, and now I was making mine. The BMW sitting in his driveway wasn't just a car anymore. It was justice waiting to be served. The repossession order sat on my kitchen table like a legal weapon, every line meticulously crafted to withstand scrutiny. Jake had worked with his attorney contact to ensure the documentation was ironclad. The debt was clearly established, the asset was specifically identified by VENG number, and the legal justification was unassailable. This is actually one of the cleanest repo orders I've ever seen, Jake said, reviewing the paperwork one final time. Usually we're dealing with missed car payments or defaulted loans. This is straight-up theft recovery, which gives us even stronger legal standing. We met at Jake's warehouse on Thursday evening to finalize the operational details. His setup was impressive: multiple tow trucks, GPS tracking equipment, lockout tools, and a computer system that could access motor vehicle databases in real time. This wasn't some fly-by-night operation. Jake ran a legitimate, licensed asset recovery business with all the proper permits and insurance. Walk me through the timeline again, I said, needing to hear the plan one more time. Tomorrow evening, you'll confirm their dinner reservation by calling the restaurant. Marcus and his wife arrive at Chez Laurent around 8 p.m. We give them 30 minutes to get settled and don't want them running out before the appetizers arrive. At 8:30, I move in with the flatbed. Jake pulled up satellite images of the restaurant's parking layout on his computer. Self-park lot. Has 2 exits, but the BMW will be in their usual spot based on your surveillance. I'll position the truck to block any quick escape routes, not that they'll even know what's happening until it's over. How long does the actual repo take, with the right equipment? 4 minutes, maybe 5. Hook up the winch, secure the vehicle, and we're gone. The beauty of a flatbed is that we don't need keys or any fancy maneuvering. Car goes up, we drive away. I studied the photos Jake had taken during his reconnaissance. The restaurant's parking lot was well lit, but not heavily monitored. More importantly, it was public property, which meant we had every right to be there. Executing a legal repossession order. What about afterwards? I asked, where does the car go? Secure storage facility I use for all my repos. Climate controlled, fully insured, completely legitimate. The car stays there until the debt is resolved or a court orders otherwise. All standard procedure. Despite the legal clarity, I was fighting an internal battle. 3 years of being the perfect employee, of following rules and trusting the system, made this feel surreal. But Marcus had forced this situation by stealing from me. I wasn't the aggressor here, I was simply recovering what was rightfully mine. You're having second thoughts, Jake observed. Not about recovering my money, about the timing maybe. Their anniversary dinner. Sarah, let me tell you something I learned in the military. Evil thrives when good people worry more about being polite than being just. This man stole from you, he's probably stolen from others. He's living a lie funded by theft, and his wife is unknowingly participating in that lie. Jake was right, but it didn't make this feel any easier. What if there are complications? What if Marcus causes a scene? That's why we do this professionally. I carry body cameras, everything is documented, and we have backup plans. If Marcus wants to make a scene in front of a fancy restaurant full of witnesses, that's his choice. But the car is coming with us regardless. We ran through contingency scenarios. What if Marcus followed us? What if he called the police? What if his wife became hysterical? Jake had protocols for everything, developed over years of dealing with people who didn't want to give up their assets. The key, he explained, is staying calm and professional. We're not criminals, we're licensed recovery agents executing a legal order. Police will check our documentation, verify the debt, and let us proceed. Marcus can scream all he wants, but the law is on our side. I reviewed my own role one final time. I wouldn't be at the restaurant that was purely Jake's operation. My job was to stay home, maintain normal communications if Marcus tried to contact me, and be ready to present my documentation if law enforcement got involved. After tomorrow night, there's no going back, Jake warned. This becomes public, legal, and permanent. Your relationship with Marcus will be destroyed, but, more importantly, you'll have sent a message that stealing from employees has consequences. I thought about Jennifer struggling to pay rent, about Tom losing thousands to Marcus's commission manipulation, about all the other employees who'd been quietly victimized by Marcus's systematic theft. Someone needed to stand up to him, and it might as well be me. I'm ready, I said, signing the final authorization form that would allow Jake to act as my agent in recovering the BMW. And let's get your car back. As I drove home that night, I felt a strange mixture of nervousness and excitement. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that his casual theft had serious consequences. His wife would discover that her anniversary gift was purchased with stolen money. And I would finally get justice for 3 years of exploitation and abuse. The perfect employee was about to become the perfect plaintiff, and Marcus's world was about to change forever. The restaurant reservation confirmation glowed on my phone screen. Henderson, party of 2, 8 p.m. Table 12. I'd called Shay Laurent that afternoon, posing as Marcus's assistant to confirm their anniversary dinner. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. At 7:45 p.m., I sat in my studio apartment, staring at my phone and fighting waves of anxiety. Jake had texted me updates throughout the day. Equipment checked and loaded. Legal docs reviewed one final time. Positioning at target location now. My laptop was open to Marcus's wife's Instagram feed, where she'd been posting throughout the day about their anniversary celebration. Her latest post, uploaded just 30 minutes ago, showed her getting ready in a stunning black dress. Anniversary dinner at Shay Laurent. 10 years with my amazing husband who always finds ways to surprise me. Feeling so grateful and loved. #anniversary Shay Laurent #10 years. The comments from her friends were nauseating. You two are couple goals. Marcus is such a romantic. That BMW surprise was incredible. Each compliment was built on theft. Every congratulation was celebrating my stolen money. At 8:15 p.m., Jake sent a crucial text. Targets arrived. BMW parked in usual spot. Section C4. Subjects entering restaurant now. Beginning approach in 15 minutes. I walked to my window and stared out at the brick wall that had been my view for 3 years. In 15 minutes, everything would change. Marcus would go from smug thief to humiliated victim. His wife would discover that her perfect anniversary was funded by stolen money. And I would finally get justice for years of exploitation. My phone buzzed. Moving in now. BMW confirmed locked. No additional security. Estimated recovery time, 4 minutes. Inside Shay Laurent, Marcus and his wife were probably studying their menus, discussing wine pairings, celebrating their anniversary with my stolen money. They had no idea that 50 yards away, their evening was about to become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. I imagined the scene. Jake's flatbed tow truck pulling up silently behind the BMW, the hydraulic whine of the lifting mechanism, the precision choreography of professional asset recovery, The BMW would be secured and loaded in minutes, disappearing into the night it had never existed. Package secured. Departing location now. No complications. I exhaled deeply, realizing I'd been holding my breath. It was done. The BMW purchased with my stolen money was no longer in Marcus's possession. Justice had been served with professional precision, but even as relief washed over me, I knew the real drama was just beginning. Marcus and his wife would finish their appetizers, maybe their main course, before deciding to leave. They'd walk out of the restaurant hand in hand, discussing what a wonderful evening they'd had, making plans for the rest of their anniversary celebration. And then they'd reach the parking lot. Try to imagine Marcus's face when he realized the BMW was gone. The confusion, the panic, the gradual understanding that this wasn't a random theft but something much more personal. His wife's shock as she processed that her anniversary gift had vanished. My phone rang. Jake. It's done, he said simply. BMW is secured at the storage facility. Everything went exactly as planned. No witnesses, no complications. Completely professional. How long before they discover it's missing? Depends how long they linger over dessert. But Sarah, once they find out, things are going to move fast. Marcus will call the police. He'll call you. He'll probably call a lawyer. Are you ready for that? I thought about my documentation, neatly organized in a folder on my kitchen table. Employment contract, performance records, bonus payment schedule, bank statements, BMW purchase receipt. Everything Marcus would need to see to understand exactly how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered. I'm ready, I said. Let him call whoever he wants. The law is on our side. The car's safe, the paperwork is perfect, and you've got the strongest case I've ever seen. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. After Jake hung up, I sat in my tiny apartment and tried to process what had just happened. For 3 years, I'd been the perfect employee, accepting Marcus's exploitation and believing that hard work would eventually be rewarded. I'd swallowed every insult, every delayed payment, every manipulation because I needed the job and trusted the system. But tonight, I'd stopped being a victim and become something else entirely. I'd used skills Marcus didn't know I possessed, connections he couldn't imagine, and legal knowledge that put me at a strategic advantage he'd never anticipated. The BMW, sitting in Jake's storage facility, wasn't just a repossessed car, it was a symbol of accountability. Marcus had spent years believing that other people's labor belonged to him, that employees were resources to be exploited without consequences. Tonight he was learning that actions create reactions and theft creates legal liability. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Chez Laurent Ballet Service. Are you the owner of BMW license plate? I deleted it without reading further. Let them figure out their parking situation. At 9:47 p.m., my phone exploded with calls. Marcus, over and over, each call going to voicemail. I let them all ring through, knowing that answering would only complicate things legally. Everything from this point forward needed to be documented and formal. Finally, at 10:23 p.m., Marcus left a voicemail. His voice was strained, panicked. Sarah, it's Marcus. Something terrible has happened. My wife's car was stolen from the restaurant parking lot. I need you to come in early tomorrow so we can discuss some security concerns about the company. Call me back immediately. I played the message 3 times, marveling at his audacity. Even now, facing the consequences of his theft, he was trying to manipulate me into helping him. The man was incapable of accepting responsibility for his actions. I texted Jake. He's already calling. Left a message about security concerns. Let him call. By tomorrow morning, he'll have figured out this wasn't random. That's when things get really interesting. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring the confrontation I'd been preparing for all week. Marcus thought. He was dealing with a helpless employee who would panic at his first sign of trouble. He was about to discover that he'd stolen from someone who fought back, and fought smart. The perfect employee was done being perfect. Now it was time to be powerful. My phone had 47 missed calls and 23 text messages when I turned it on Saturday morning. Marcus's desperation was palpable in the escalating urgency of his communications, each message more frantic than the last. The first few texts were attempts at manipulation. Sarah, family emergency, need your help as AP. Company security issue. Call immediately. This affects all employees, urgent response needed. But as the night progressed and his calls went unanswered, his tone shifted to something approaching panic. My wife's car was stolen. Police involved. Need to discuss employee parking security immediately. Sarah, this is serious. Call me back now. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? The final messages, sent around 2 a.m., revealed a man slowly connecting the dots. Talked to police. They said this might not be random theft. Sarah, we need to talk about your bonus situation. Maybe we can work something out. Call me. We can resolve the payment issue immediately. I screenshot every message before responding with a single text. I'll be in the office Monday morning as scheduled. We can discuss any work-related issues then. Jake called while I was having my morning coffee. You see the news yet? What news? Local crime report. High-end BMW stolen from upscale restaurant parking lot during romantic anniversary dinner. They interviewed Marcus and his wife. You should watch it. I found the news segment online within minutes. There was Marcus, standing in the Chez Laurent parking lot with his wife, both looking shaken and confused. His wife was crying, talking about how the BMW was her dream anniversary gift and how violated she felt. We can't understand who would do this, Marcus told the reporter. It was such a beautiful evening, and then suddenly our car was just gone. My wife is heartbroken. This was supposed to be the perfect anniversary celebration. The reporter asked about the car's value. $15,000, Marcus said. I saved up for months to surprise her with it. I nearly choked on my coffee. Saved up for months. The audacity was breathtaking. His wife wiped her tears and spoke directly to the camera. Whoever did this, please just return the car. It means everything to me. It's not just a car, it's a symbol of my husband's love and commitment. Please, if you're watching this, find it in your heart to give it back. The segment included security footage from the restaurant's exterior cameras, but the angles were poor, and the lighting made it impossible to identify Jake or his equipment clearly. The police spokesman said they were investigating it as a theft, but had no leads at this time. Marcus's phone started ringing incessantly after the news aired. I watched through my window as neighbors and colleagues called to offer sympathy and support. His social media filled with messages of outrage and compassion. So sorry this happened to you. What kind of monster steals a car during someone's anniversary? Hope they catch whoever did this. Each supportive message was another layer of irony. If these people knew the truth that the victim was actually a thief who'd stolen the money to buy the car in the first place, their sympathy would evaporate instantly. But Marcus's wife was different. Her pain was genuine. Her tears were real. She truly believed her husband had saved money to buy her a dream gift, and now that gift was gone. She was a victim too, just not in the way she understood. Around noon, my phone rang. Jennifer from work. Sarah, did you see the news about Marcus? Someone stole his wife's car right from the restaurant parking lot. She was on TV crying about it. It's so awful. I saw it, I said carefully. Definitely unexpected. He's been calling everyone, trying to get people to come in over the weekend to discuss security protocols. Tom said he got 5 calls this morning. Marcus seems really rattled. I'm sure he is. He asked me if I knew how to reach you. Sighed. He's been trying to call, but you weren't answering. I told him you were probably just busy with weekend stuff. After Jennifer hung up, I realized Marcus was systematically calling every employee, trying to gauge their reactions and possibly identify who might be responsible. He was conducting his own investigation, probably hoping to find some evidence before involving company management or law enforcement. Texted me around 3 p.m. Police came by the storage facility this morning. Routine check since we're licensed. For vehicle recovery. Showed them our documentation, everything checked out clean. They thanked us for our cooperation and left. Any problems? None. The paperwork is solid, and they understand the legal difference between theft and asset recovery. Marcus can file all the police reports he wants. We're covered. That evening, Marcus's wife posted an emotional message on social media. Thank you to everyone who has reached out about our stolen car. The support has been overwhelming. We're working with police and hoping for a miracle. This car meant so much to us. It represented 10 years of marriage and my husband's incredible generosity. Whoever took it, please remember that behind every stolen item is a human story, a person's feelings and family's hopes and dreams. Reading her post, I felt a complex mix of emotions. She was right that behind every stolen item was a human story, but the human story here was mine. I was the one whose hopes and dreams had been crushed when Marcus stole my bonus. I was the one whose feelings had been dismissed when he prioritized his wife's anniversary gift over my financial stability. Marcus had created this situation by stealing from me. His wife's tears were the consequence of his choices, not mine. I hadn't stolen anything. I'd recovered something that was purchased with stolen money. But understanding the logic didn't make watching her pain any easier. My phone buzzed one final time that day with a text from Marcus. Sarah, I know what happened to the car. We need to talk immediately. This doesn't have to escalate further. Call me. I showed the message to Jake when he stopped by that evening. He read it and shook his head. He's figured it out, that he's still trying to control the narrative. Classic response from someone who's used to manipulating his way out of problems. What happens now? Now he has a choice. He can pay you what he owes and get his car back, or he can keep pretending he's the victim while you let the legal system sort it out. Either way, his days of casual theft are over. I looked at my documentation folder, then at my bank account balance, then at the photos on my phone of Marcus's wife crying on television. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation I'd been building toward for weeks. Marcus thought he could intimidate me into returning his wife's car without addressing the underlying theft. He was about to learn that victimizing an employee and victimizing someone who fought back were two very different things. Marcus was waiting for me in the parking lot when I arrived at work Monday morning. His usually pristine appearance was disheveled, wrinkled shirt, unshaven face, eyes red from what looked like a sleepless weekend. The confident, smug boss I'd known for 3 years had been replaced by a desperate man barely holding himself together. Sarah, he called out as I walked toward the building. We need to talk, now. I pulled out my phone and hit record, a habit I developed during my repo days when documentation was everything. Good morning, Marcus. I got your messages over the weekend. You mentioned wanting to discuss work-related issues. He glanced around the parking lot nervously, then stepped closer. Cut the crap, Sarah. I know you took my wife's car. I don't know how you did it or who helped you, but I know it was you. I'm sorry, what? Someone stole your wife's car? I saw something on the news about that. How terrible. I kept my voice level, professional. Don't play games with me, he hissed. This is about the bonus money, isn't it? Fine. You want your money? I'll get you your money. Just return the car and we can pretend this never happened. Marcus, I'm confused. Are you saying you have my bonus ready? Because according to company policy, it was due over a week ago. His facade cracked further. Yes, okay. I have your bonus, $15,000, right? I can get it to you today. Just tell me where the car is. I stopped walking and looked at him directly. That's interesting timing. Last week you told me the money wasn't available, that you'd borrowed it for something important. Now suddenly you have it available. Marcus's face flushed red. Look, I found a way to free up the cash, okay? Business finances are complicated. The important thing is that I can pay you today. What did you borrow my money for, Marcus? You mentioned it was something important. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing around again. That's not relevant to this discussion. Actually, I think it's very relevant. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of his wife's Instagram post celebrating the BMW. $15,000 for a car, Marcus. The exact amount of my bonus. His eyes widened as he realized how thoroughly I documented his theft. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. This is extortion. You can't just take someone's car because you think they owe you money. I haven't taken anyone's car, Marcus. But I am curious about something. I showed him the BMW purchase receipt that Jake had obtained. This shows you paid exactly $15,000 cash for a BMW. On January 18th, my bonus was due January 15th. Interesting. Coincidence. Marcus stared at the receipt, his face going pale. How did you where did you get this? Public records are amazing things, so are employment contracts. I pulled out my documentation folder. Speaking of which, would you like to review my employment agreement? Section 4.2 specifically outlines bonus payment schedules and employee rights regarding earned commissions. Sarah, please. My wife is devastated. She's been crying for 3 days straight. That car meant everything to her. I'm sure she's upset. But Marcus, you stole $15,000 from me to buy that car. You took my money I earned through my sales performance and spent it on a gift for your wife. How do you think that makes me feel? He ran his hands through his hair frantically. It wasn't like that. I just needed to borrow the money temporarily. I was going to pay you back. When? You said eventually. That's not a payment schedule. Marcus, that's theft with a promise. I'm offering to pay you right now, today. Just tell me where the car is and we can end this. I studied his desperate face, recognizing the voice recording app was capturing every word of this conversation. You're admitting that you took my bonus money to buy your wife a car. I borrowed it temporarily, for a legitimate purpose. Without my permission. Without a contract. Without a timeline for repayment. That's called theft, Marcus. He stepped closer, his desperation turning to anger. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Sarah. I have lawyers. I have connections. If you don't return that car immediately, I'll destroy your career. I'll make sure you never work in sales again. Are you threatening me, Marcus? I'm explaining reality to you. You're a nobody. I'm a successful business manager with resources you can't imagine. Cross me and I'll crush you. I looked at him calmly. A successful business manager who steals from his employees to fund his personal expenses. Is that the reputation you want to protect? I didn't steal anything, he exploded. I borrowed money with the intention of paying it back. That's not theft. Without permission, without documentation, without a timeline, that's exactly theft. And Marcus, I have recordings of you admitting to taking my money. I have documentation showing you spent it immediately on a personal purchase. I have witness statements from other employees about your pattern of financial manipulation. His face went white. Witness statements? Did you think Jennifer and Tom wouldn't talk about their delayed bonuses and restructured commissions? Did you think your financial abuse of employees was a secret? Marcus staggered backward, finally understanding the scope of what I'd assembled against him. This is insane. You can't do this to me. My wife doesn't deserve to suffer because of some workplace dispute. You're right, Marcus. She doesn't deserve to suffer, but you created this situation when you stole from me. Your wife is suffering because of your choices, not mine. Please, he whispered, all his bluster gone. Just tell me what you want. Money? A promotion? A better commission structure? I can make this worth your while. I looked at this broken man who had casually stolen my future and felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. What I want is simple, Marcus. I want my $15,000 bonus, plus interest for the delay. I want it today, in certified funds. And I want a written acknowledgement that you inappropriately delayed payment of earned commissions. And then you'll return the car? Then we'll discuss the car situation through appropriate legal channels. Marcus's desperation turned back to anger. You can't negotiate with stolen property. That car belongs to my wife. That car was purchased with stolen money, Marcus. My stolen money, until you make this right. That car represents evidence of your theft. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police right now. This is extortion and I'm not going to stand for it. Go ahead, I said calmly. But when they get here, I'll show them the same documentation I just showed you. Employment contract, bonus payment schedule, purchase receipt, voice recordings of you admitting to taking my money. Let's see who they believe is the real criminal here. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, then slowly lowered his phone. For the first time in 3 years, he looked at me not as a subordinate to be exploited, but as an adversary who had outmaneuvered him completely. You've been planning this, he said quietly. I've been documenting everything, Marcus. That's what good employees do, they keep records. Unfortunately for you, those records show a pattern of theft and abuse that's about to become very public. What happens now? Now you have a choice. Pay me what you owe me, admit what you did, and we can resolve this professionally. Or keep pretending you're the victim, while I let the legal system sort out who really stole from whom. Marcus looked at the building where his other employees were arriving for work, then back at me. This isn't over, Sarah. Actually, Marcus, I think it is. The only question now is whether it ends with you doing the right thing, or with you facing the consequences of doing the wrong thing. I walked toward the building, leaving him standing in the parking lot with the wreckage of his arrogance and the weight of his choices. The confrontation was over, but the real reckoning was just beginning. The HR complaint form felt like a weapon in my hands as I filled it out with meticulous detail. Every section was documented with timestamps, witness names, and supporting evidence. Employee theft, wage violations, systematic commission manipulation, abuse of authority. The charges read like a criminal indictment, which wasn't far from the truth. Linda Martinez, our HR director, read through my complaint with growing alarm. She was a competent woman in her 50s who joined the company 6 months ago to modernize workplace practices. I doubted she'd anticipated dealing with systematic employee theft quite this quickly. Sarah, these are very serious allegations, she said, reviewing the 20-page documentation package I'd submitted. You're claiming that Marcus Henderson has been systematically stealing from employee compensation. Not claiming, proving. I handed her additional evidence, the BMW purchase receipt, screenshots of Marcus's wife's social media posts, voice recordings from our parking lot confrontation, and witness statements from Jennifer and Tom about their own delayed payments. Linda's face grew pale as she absorbed the scope of Marcus's misconduct. This purchase receipt shows he spent $15,000 on a personal vehicle the same week your bonus was due. The exact amount of my bonus, purchased 3 days after it should have been paid to me. When I confronted him about the delay, he admitted to borrowing the money for his wife's anniversary gift. And you have this admission recorded. I played the audio from our parking lot conversation. Marcus's voice filled the small HR office. I borrowed money temporarily. My wife's been after me for months about getting her a new car. Cost exactly $15,000. Perfect timing, really. Linda stopped the recording and stared at me. He actually said the words perfect timing about stealing your bonus money. He's been doing this for years. Jennifer's bonus was delayed last quarter, Marcus. Claimed cash flow issues, then showed up with a new Rolex. Tom had his commission structure retroactively changed, costing him thousands. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern of systematic theft. Linda pulled up Marcus's personnel file on her computer, her expression growing darker as she read. There have been ... irregularities, expense reports that seemed high, budget discrepancies that were never fully explained. I inherited these files when I started, and I flagged several items for review. What kind of irregularities? Company, credit card charges for personal expenses, travel reimbursements for trips that weren't business related, and now this direct theft from employee compensation. Linda closed the file and looked at me directly. Sarah, I need you to understand something. If we proceed with this complaint, it becomes a legal matter. There will be investigations, audits, possibly criminal charges. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? Marcus stole from me and used the money to buy his wife a car. I've documented everything meticulously. I'm not afraid of scrutiny. I'm counting on it. Linda nodded grimly. Then we need to involve corporate legal immediately. This goes far beyond HR policy violations. Within 2 hours, the corporate legal team had descended on Premier Auto Solutions like a SWAT team. 3 attorneys, 2 forensic accountants, and an internal audit specialist turned Marcus's office inside out, seizing computers, financial records, and expense reports going back 3 years. Marcus himself was nowhere to be found. Word spread quickly through the office that he'd called in sick that morning, right after I'd submitted my HR complaint. Jennifer whispered that she'd seen him cleaning out his desk at dawn, before most employees arrived. Coward, Tom muttered during our impromptu break room gathering. He knew this day would come eventually. The forensic audit was swift and devastating. By Wednesday, the legal team had uncovered a pattern of financial misconduct, stretching back to Marcus's first year as sales manager. Delayed bonus payments, manipulated commission structures, personal expenses charged to company accounts, and systematically diverted revenue streams. The total amount of theft appears to exceed $200,000, Linda informed me during a private meeting. Your case was the tip of the iceberg. Marcus has been running this department like his personal checking account. Other employees started coming forward with their own stories. Michelle from accounting revealed that Marcus had pressured her to delay bonus payments multiple times, always with excuses about cash flow or budget constraints. David from customer service had been forced to restructure client contracts to generate personal commissions for Marcus. The company's legal exposure was staggering. Not only had Marcus been stealing directly from employee compensation, but his actions had created potential liability for wage violations, tax fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Corporate headquarters was facing a potential class action lawsuit from employees who'd been systematically robbed by their manager. Where is Marcus now? I asked Linda during Thursday's update meeting. Suspended pending investigation. He's been ordered to surrender all company property and refrain from contacting employees or clients. His access to company systems has been revoked, and we've frozen all expense accounts pending the audit. What about criminal charges? That depends on the final audit results and the district attorney's office. But Sarah, based on what we've uncovered so far, criminal prosecution seems highly likely. Friday afternoon brought the conclusion of the forensic audit. The findings were comprehensive and damning. Marcus had systematically stolen from employees, manipulated financial records, and used company resources for personal gain. The total theft exceeded $250,000 when interest and penalties were calculated. The most shocking discovery came from the deep dive into company financial records. Marcus hadn't just been stealing from individual employees, he'd been skimming from company revenue streams, creating false expense reports and manipulating client contracts to generate personal income. He was running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme, Linda explained to the assembled sales team. What happened to Sarah's bonus was just one small part of a much larger criminal enterprise. The company's response was swift and comprehensive. Marcus was terminated immediately. All stolen funds would be repaid with interest, and new financial controls would be implemented to prevent similar abuse. More importantly, the company committed to full cooperation with law enforcement in pursuing criminal charges. We failed you, Linda said during the all-hands meeting. We allowed a manager to systematically abuse his authority and steal from the people who trusted him. That ends now. As I sat in that meeting, surrounded by colleagues who'd also been victimized by Marcus's theft, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. I'd exposed a criminal, but the cost had been enormous, not just for Marcus, But for everyone who trusted him, the perfect employee had become the perfect whistleblower, and the company would never be the same again. The attorney consultation notes spread across my kitchen table told a story of systematic criminal behavior that went far beyond my stolen bonus. Margaret Chen, the employment attorney I'd hired with my recovered money, had spent 3 hours reviewing my documentation and the company's forensic audit results. "Sarah, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of employee theft I've ever seen," Margaret said, reviewing her handwritten notes. "Not only do you have ironclad documentation of wage violations, but Marcus's admissions create criminal liability that extends far beyond civil recovery." She pulled out a legal pad covered with calculations. "Your damages alone exceed $18,000 when we include interest, penalties, and emotional distress. But the class action potential here is enormous. Every employee who was victimized by a scheme has grounds for recovery." The legal analysis was devastating for Marcus. Theft of wages, violation of labor laws, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and potentially federal tax evasion if he'd failed to report his stolen income properly. Each charge carried significant penalties, including potential prison time. "What about the BMW?" I asked. "Legally purchased with stolen funds, which creates what's called a constructive trust. The asset belongs to you until the underlying debt is satisfied. Your recovery action was completely legitimate." Margaret's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and raised an eyebrow. "Speak of the devil, this is Marcus's attorney." The conversation was brief and professional. Margaret listened more than she spoke, occasionally taking notes or asking clarifying questions. When she hung up, she was smiling grimly. "Marcus wants to settle. His attorney is proposing full restitution plus damages in exchange for you not pursuing criminal charges. Problem is, it's not up to you anymore." "What do you mean?" "The district attorney's office opened their own investigation based on the company's complaint. This isn't just a civil matter now, it's a criminal case. Marcus is facing felony charges, regardless of what you decide." Over the next week, Marcus's world collapsed piece by piece. His attorney desperately tried to minimize the criminal exposure, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic audit had uncovered 3 years of systematic theft, manipulation, and fraud. Multiple employees had come forward with similar stories of delayed payments, manipulated commissions. The psychological impact on Marcus was visible and severe. Jennifer saw him at a coffee shop near his house, looking haggard and desperate. "He tried to apologize to me," she told me later. "Said he never meant to hurt anyone, that he'd just gotten over his head financially. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks." His wife's social media presence told its own story. The celebration posts about their anniversary and the BMW had been deleted. Her profile became increasingly sparse, then private, then disappeared entirely. Friends reported that she'd moved in with her sister and was considering divorce. "The personal toll is always the hardest part," Margaret observed during one of our meetings. "Marcus created this situation through his choices, but the consequences affect everyone around him." The criminal investigation moved with surprising speed. The district attorney's office assigned a prosecutor who specialized in white-collar crime, and she was thorough in her approach. Marcus was formally charged with multiple felonies: theft, embezzlement, fraud, and violation of labor laws. His attempt to plea bargain was rejected. The prosecutor, Janet Torres, made it clear that the systematic nature of his crimes demanded serious consequences. "Mr. Henderson didn't make a mistake," she told the media. "He ran a criminal enterprise designed to steal from the people who trusted him. That demands accountability." The company's cooperation with law enforcement was complete and devastating. Every financial record, every email, every expense report was turned over to prosecutors. The paper trail of Marcus's crimes was exhaustive and incontrovertible. "He's going to prison," Margaret told me after reviewing the prosecutor's evidence package. "The only question is for how long? 3 years minimum, possibly 5 depending on the final restitution amount." that Marcus's legal troubles were just beginning. The IRS opened their own investigation into his failure to report stolen income. The State Labor Board launched proceedings to recover penalties and interest. And the civil lawsuits started piling up as other victimized employees hired attorneys and filed their own claims. His house went into foreclosure within a month. The luxury lifestyle funded by employee theft couldn't be sustained when the theft stopped and legal bills started mounting. His wife filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and seeking to protect her financial interests from his criminal liability. The irony, Margaret observed, is that if he'd just paid you your bonus on time, none of this would have happened. One act of casual theft brought down his entire house of cards. The BMW remained in Jake's storage facility, a symbol of Marcus's downfall and my vindication. Technically, I could have sold it to recover my damages, but I decided to wait for the criminal case to conclude. The car had become evidence in multiple proceedings, and its symbolic value was more important than its monetary worth. Marcus's former colleagues avoided him completely. The few who had initially offered sympathy withdrew their support as the scope of his crimes became clear. He'd betrayed not just his employees, but everyone who trusted him professionally. He's trying to blame everyone but himself, Tom reported after running into Marcus's attorney at the courthouse. Claims the company pressured him to cut costs, that he was just trying to manage cash flow efficiently. His lawyer looked embarrassed to be making the argument. As the weeks passed, Marcus's desperation became more apparent. He'd lost his job, his house, his marriage, and his reputation. The man who'd casually stolen my bonus was facing years in prison and financial ruin. The legal system was working exactly as it should. Actions had consequences, theft created liability, and people who abused their authority faced accountability. Marcus had spent years believing he was untouchable, that his position protected him from the consequences of his choices. He was learning that nobody is above the law, and everyone who steals eventually pays the price. The internal audit report landed on my desk like a bombshell, even though I'd been expecting its conclusions for weeks. 73 pages of forensic accounting that exposed Marcus Henderson as a criminal who'd been systematically looting Premier Auto Solutions for over 3 years. The scope of his theft was staggering. Beyond my stolen bonus, Marcus had manipulated commission structures for 12 different employees, delayed bonus payments to create cash flow for personal use, submitted fraudulent expense reports totaling $47,000, and skimmed client payments through a sophisticated scheme involving phantom service charges. Linda called an all-hands meeting to review the findings. The conference room was packed with employees, many of whom had been victims of Marcus's schemes without realizing it. The atmosphere was tense, angry, and somehow relieved finally. Everyone understood why their paychecks had seemed inconsistent, and their bonuses had been delayed. The total amount of theft exceeds $280,000, Linda announced, reading from the audit executive summary. This includes direct wage theft, manipulated commissions, fraudulent expenses, and diverted company revenue. Every affected employee will receive full restitution plus interest and penalties. Hands shot up around the room as employees demanded answers. How had this gone undetected for so long? What controls would prevent it from happening again? Was the company financially stable enough to make everyone whole? We failed you, Linda admitted, her voice carrying genuine remorse. Our oversight systems were inadequate, our financial controls were weak, and we trusted someone who systematically betrayed that trust. We're implementing new procedures immediately to ensure this never happens again. The most shocking revelation came from Michelle in accounting. Marcus had pressured her to alter client billing records, creating fake service charges that he pocketed directly. When she'd questioned the practice, he'd threatened her job and convinced her that it was a legitimate business strategy. I should have reported it immediately, Michelle said, tears streaming down her face, but I was afraid of losing my job. Marcus made me believe that questioning him would mean getting fired. Tom's story was equally disturbing. Marcus had retroactively changed his commission structure in the middle of a sales quarter, costing him nearly $8,000 in earned income. When Tom protested, Marcus had gaslighted him into believing the change was part of a company-wide restructuring that had been communicated months earlier. He was so convincing, Tom said. He had fake memos, altered spreadsheets, made it seem like I was the one who had misunderstood the compensation plan. Employee after employee shared similar stories of manipulation, intimidation, and theft. Marcus had created a culture of fear where questioning his decisions was treated as insubordination. He'd isolated victims, made them feel like they were the problem, and convinced them that speaking up would result in termination. The psychological impact of his crimes was as devastating as the financial damage. Employees had lost confidence in their own judgment, questioned their worth, and accepted financial abuse because they'd been systematically gaslighted into believing they deserved it. He was a master manipulator, Jennifer observed during our impromptu support group in the break room. He made us all feel grateful just to have jobs, even while he was stealing from us. But the audit revealed something else. Marcus's personal financial situation had been desperate for years. Credit card debt exceeding $150,000, mortgage payments he could barely afford, and a lifestyle that required constant infusions of stolen money to maintain. He hadn't been stealing for luxury, he'd been stealing for survival. Classic embezzler profile, Margaret explained when I shared the audit findings with her. Someone living beyond their means who justifies theft as temporary borrowing. The problem is, the need for money never decreases, so the theft escalates until discovery becomes inevitable. The criminal investigation accelerated based on the audit findings. Prosecutor Janet Torres had built an airtight case with multiple felony counts, victim impact statements from 15 employees, and forensic evidence that would be impossible for Marcus to refute. His divorce proceedings became a public spectacle, as his wife's attorney fought to protect her assets from his criminal liability. Court documents revealed that she'd been completely unaware of his theft, believing their lifestyle was funded by legitimate business success and investment returns. She's as much a victim as anyone, the divorce attorney told reporters. Mrs. Henderson was deceived by her husband's criminal activity and is now facing financial ruin through no fault of her own. The BMW had become a symbol of Marcus's downfall, sitting in Jake's storage facility while lawyers argued over its ultimate disposition. I could have sold it immediately to recover my damages, but I wanted Marcus to face the full consequences of his choices, without any shortcuts or easy resolutions. Headquarters dispatched a crisis management team to rebuild Premier Auto Solutions' reputation and implement new financial controls. Every expense required dual approval, all commission calculations were audited monthly, and employee complaint procedures were strengthened to prevent future abuse. We're rebuilding this company from the ground up, the new regional manager announced. During her first team meeting, the culture of fear and intimidation ends today. Your compensation belongs to you, your achievements will be recognized, and your concerns will be heard. Marcus's former office was cleared out and converted into a conference room. His nameplate was removed, his photos were taken down, and all traces of his presence were systematically eliminated. It was as if he'd never existed, except for the lingering trauma he'd inflicted on everyone who trusted him. The local business community ostracized him completely. Word of his crimes spread quickly through professional networks, ensuring that he'd never work in sales or management again. His reputation was destroyed as thoroughly as his victims' trust had been. He'll never recover from this, Linda observed during one of our final meetings about the investigation. Even if he serves his time and pays restitution, no one will ever trust him with responsibility again. As I looked around the transformed office, seeing colleagues who were finally being paid fairly and treated with respect, I realized that exposing Marcus's crimes had accomplished something beyond personal justice. We'd eliminated a predator who'd been systematically victimizing vulnerable employees. And we'd created a safer workplace for everyone. The perfect employee had become the perfect whistleblower. And sometimes that's exactly what the situation demands. The new apartment lease felt like freedom in my hands as I signed my name with a flourish. 1 bedroom, hardwood floors, windows that faced apart instead of a brick wall, and a kitchen large enough for an actual dining table. After 3 years in my studio prison, this felt like a palace. The $18,000 settlement from Marcus had arrived the previous week, my stolen bonus plus interest, penalties and damages. The company had insisted on paying immediately, even before Marcus's criminal case concluded, as part of their commitment to making victims whole. For the first time in my adult life, I had financial breathing room, but the transformation went deeper than just money. Something fundamental had shifted inside me during the weeks of investigation and legal proceedings. I discovered reserves of strength and strategic thinking that I'd never known I possessed. The timid employee who'd accepted Marcus's abuse. For 3 years had evolved into someone who fought back intelligently and effectively. You carry yourself differently now, Jennifer observed during our lunch at a restaurant I could finally afford. More confident, more powerful, I guess. Like, you can handle whatever comes next. She was right. The experience of exposing Marcus, documenting his crimes, and pursuing justice had taught me that I wasn't helpless in the face of abuse. I had skills, resources, and allies. Most importantly, I had the courage to use them when necessary. My relationship with my colleagues had evolved too. They no longer saw me as just the top sales performer. I'd become something of a workplace hero, the person who'd stood up to systemic abuse and won. Newer employees sought my advice not just about sales techniques, but about advocating for themselves and recognizing workplace exploitation. You saved all of us, Tom said during the office celebration of my apartment move. If you hadn't exposed Marcus, he'd still be stealing from people and getting away with it. You changed everything. The personal growth extended beyond professional confidence. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to document everything, and to build strategic alliances before confronting problems. The skills I developed during my Metro Recovery Services days investigation, documentation, legal strategy had proven invaluable in a completely different context. My new apartment became a symbol of that transformation. Instead of hiding in a cramped studio, feeling ashamed of my living situation, I was hosting dinner parties and inviting colleagues over for weekend gatherings. The space reflected my evolved sense of self-worth and financial independence, but the most significant change was psychological. For years, I defined myself through my work performance, believing that if I just worked hard enough and achieved enough, I'd be rewarded and respected. Marcus's theft had shattered that naive belief, forcing me to confront the reality that some people would exploit kindness and mistake dedication for weakness. You learn that being good at your job isn't enough if you're working for bad people, my therapist Dr. Roberts observed during one of our sessions. The trauma of theft and betrayal forced you to develop new coping mechanisms and self-advocacy skills. The therapy had been another investment in my recovery and growth. Dealing with Marcus's psychological manipulation, the stress of confrontation, and the complex emotions around his downfall required professional guidance. Dr. Roberts helped me process the anger, guilt, and satisfaction in healthy ways. Do you regret exposing him? She asked during one session. Never, I replied without hesitation. I regret that it took me 3 years to recognize his abuse and document it properly. But exposing him, that was the best decision I ever made. The ripple effects continued spreading through my life. Other companies had reached out about sales positions, impressed by my performance record and reputation for integrity. I was no longer just seeking any job that would pay my bills. I was evaluating opportunities based on company culture, management quality, and growth potential. You have options now, Margaret Churn observed during our final legal consultation. Financial stability, professional reputation, and most importantly, The knowledge that you can protect yourself if anyone tries to exploit you again. The BMW situation had finally resolved. After Marcus's criminal conviction and sentencing, I decided to sell the car and donate the proceeds to a workplace advocacy organization. The symbolic value of justice had been more important than the monetary recovery, and helping other exploited workers felt like the right way to close that chapter. My evening routine in the new apartment had become a meditation on growth and possibility. Instead of folding out a Murphy bed in a cramped studio, I was cooking dinner in a real kitchen, reading on a comfortable couch, and planning for a future that felt limitless rather than constrained. The experience had taught me that victimization was temporary, but empowerment was permanent. Marcus had stolen my money, but in fighting back, I discovered capabilities and confidence that no one could ever take away. The perfect employee had evolved into something much more valuable, a person who understood her worth and demanded appropriate treatment. Looking back at the scared, exploited worker I'd been just months earlier, I felt a mixture of compassion and pride. She'd endured 3 years of abuse while building the skills and documentation that would eventually bring down her abuser. Every delayed bonus, every manipulated commission, every casual insult had been building toward the moment when she'd finally say enough. That moment had transformed both of us, the victim and the victor, into someone new entirely. The divorce papers arrived at Marcus's temporary apartment on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who found him unshaven and hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd slept in for 3 days. His wife's attorney had been thorough irreconcilable differences, division of assets, and most devastatingly, a request for the court to shield her from liability for his criminal debts. I learned about the divorce filing from Jennifer, who'd heard it from her neighbor whose sister worked at the family court. In a city like ours, news traveled fast, especially when it involved the spectacular downfall of someone who'd once been considered successful and respectable. "She's asking for everything," Jennifer reported during our coffee break. "The house, what's left of their savings, even the wedding rings." Her lawyer is arguing that since Marcus funded their lifestyle with stolen money, she deserves protection as an innocent victim. The legal strategy was sound and heartbreaking. Marcus's wife had genuinely believed their comfortable life was built on legitimate business success. The BMW, the expensive dinners, the luxury vacations, all of it had been funded by theft from his employees, and she'd had no knowledge of his crimes. Marcus's criminal sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following month. Prosecutor Janet Torfes had built an overwhelming case, 15 felony counts including theft, embezzlement, fraud, and violation of labor laws. The evidence included financial records, witness statements, recorded admissions, and the forensic audit that detailed 3 years of systematic criminal behavior. "He's facing 5 to 7 years in state prison," Margaret informed me after speaking with the prosecutor's office. "The judge has made it clear that the systematic nature of his crimes demands significant punishment. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, it was a criminal enterprise." The psychological evaluation ordered by the court painted a picture of a man who'd completely lost touch with reality. Marcus continued to minimize his crimes, describing them as temporary cash flow management and misunderstood business practices. He showed no genuine remorse for his victims and seemed primarily concerned with his own reputation and financial losses. "Classic narcissistic personality traits," Dr. Roberts explained when I shared the evaluation summary. "People like Marcus often can't accept responsibility for their actions because it would require acknowledging that their self-image is built on lies. It's easier for them to blame circumstances or victims than to face the truth about themselves." His professional reputation was obliterated completely. The state licensing board revoked his sales certifications. The business community ostracized him, and former colleagues refused to provide character references for his sentencing hearing. Marcus Henderson had become a cautionary tale about the consequences of workplace theft and abuse. The financial destruction was equally comprehensive. Legal fees had consumed his remaining assets. The house was in foreclosure, and his credit rating had collapsed. The man who'd stolen from employees to maintain a luxury lifestyle was facing bankruptcy and homelessness, but the personal toll was perhaps the most devastating. His marriage was over, his children were ashamed of him, and his extended family had distanced themselves from the scandal. Friends who'd once envied his success now crossed the street to avoid encountering him in public. He brought all of this on himself, Tom observed with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. But watching someone's entire life collapse is still hard to witness, even when they deserve it. The victim impact statements for his sentencing hearing told the story of systematic abuse and exploitation. 15 employees described delayed bonuses, manipulated commissions, and psychological manipulation. Several mention the financial stress Marcus's theft had caused: missed rent payments, delayed medical care, and dreams deferred because of stolen money. My own statement was particularly detailed, describing not just the financial impact of his theft, but the psychological damage of discovering that 3 years of dedication and trust had been met with exploitation and abuse. I wrote about the cramped studio apartment, the delayed apartment move, and the casual cruelty of his dismissal when I'd asked for my earned money. Marcus Henderson didn't just steal money, I concluded in my statement. He stole security, dignity, and faith in the possibility that hard work would be rewarded. His crimes created trauma that extends far beyond financial damage. The sentencing hearing was sparsely attended. A few journalists, some former colleagues, and the victims who chose to appear in person. Marcus's wife was notably absent, as were most of his family members. Even his attorney seemed eager to finish the proceedings and move on to other cases. Patricia Williams was thorough in her consideration of the evidence and victim statements. She reviewed the financial damage, the systematic nature of the crimes, and Marcus's continued refusal to accept responsibility for his actions. Mr. Henderson, you held a position of trust and authority over vulnerable employees, Judge Williams said during her sentencing remarks. You systematically abused that trust to steal from the people who worked hardest for your company. Your crimes weren't crimes of desperation or momentary poor judgment. They were calculated, systematic, and cruel. The sentence was 5 years in state prison, full restitution to all victims, and 5 years of supervised probation after release. Marcus would also be prohibited from working in any position involving financial responsibility or employee supervision. As the bailiff led Marcus away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. Justice had been served, but at an enormous cost to everyone involved. His victims had been made whole financially, but the trauma and betrayal would linger for years. His wife's life had been shattered by his choices. His children would grow up with a father in prison, and Marcus himself faced years of incarceration followed by a lifetime of limited opportunities and damaged reputation. Actions have consequences, Margaret observed as we left the courthouse. Marcus chose to steal from his employees for 3 years. Now he gets to face 3 years of consequences for every year of theft. The perfect boss had become the perfect cautionary tale, and everyone who trusted him was left to rebuild from the wreckage of his crimes. The job offer letter from Pinnacle Sales Solutions arrived on a Thursday morning, crisp corporate letterhead, announcing an opportunity that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Senior Sales Director, $95,000 base salary plus uncapped commission, full benefits, and a signing bonus that exceeded my stolen $15,000 by nearly double. We've been following your career and recent professional challenges, the letter stated diplomatically. Your integrity in addressing workplace misconduct, combined with your exceptional sales performance, makes you exactly the kind of leader we want on our team. Word of my role in exposing Marcus had spread throughout the industry faster than I'd anticipated. What I'd expected to damage my reputation had actually enhanced it dramatically. Companies were actively recruiting someone who demonstrated both sales excellence and ethical courage apparently. Integrity was rarer in business than I'd realized. The phone calls had started within days of Marcus's sentencing. Executive recruiters, sales directors, and business owners who'd heard about the case and wanted to learn more about the person who'd brought down a systematic embezzler. Each conversation revealed how widespread workplace theft actually was, and how few employees had the skills and courage to effectively combat it. "You've become something of a legend," admitted Sarah Chen, the recruiter from Pinnacle. Sales professionals who also understand legal documentation, financial analysis, and strategic confrontation. That's incredibly rare. Companies are recognizing that they need people who can protect their interests from internal threats. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's abuse had forced me to develop capabilities that were now making me more valuable than ever. Investigation skills, legal knowledge, documentation expertise, and strategic thinking, none of which appeared on my original resume, all of which had emerged from necessity during my fight for justice. But the opportunity that most intrigued me came from an unexpected source. Metro Recovery Services, my former employer. Jake had recommended me for a newly created position, corporate asset recovery specialist, that would combine my sales background with my demonstrated investigative abilities. "We're seeing increased demand for employee-initiated asset recovery," explained David Rodriguez, Jake's former supervisor who now ran the corporate division. "Companies are hiring us to recover assets when their own employees steal or embezzle. Your case proved that internal recovery is possible with the right approach and documentation." The position would involve training other employees to recognize and document financial abuse, developing legal strategies for asset recovery, and occasionally executing repossessions when theft was discovered. It was like being a workplace detective with specialized expertise in financial crimes. "Think about it," Jake urged during our celebratory dinner at the restaurant I could now afford. "You'd be helping other people who are going through exactly what you experienced, teaching them how to fight back effectively and legally." The mentoring aspect appealed to me enormously. Since Marcus's downfall, I'd received dozens of messages from employees at other companies who suspected financial abuse, but didn't know how to address it. Teaching people to advocate for themselves and document exploitation could prevent thousands of future victims. Jennifer had become one of my first informal mentees. She'd suspected that her previous manager at another company had been manipulating her commission structure, but she'd never documented the concerns or understood her legal rights. Using techniques I developed during my Marcus investigation, we'd uncovered evidence of systematic wage theft affecting 12 employees. "You taught me that I don't have to accept abuse just because someone has authority over me," Jennifer said. "Documentation and legal knowledge are power, and you showed me how to use both effectively." Tom had applied for a management position at his dream company, using his experience surviving Marcus's exploitation as evidence of his resilience and ethical standards. "Hiring managers are impressed that I helped expose a criminal enterprise while maintaining my professional responsibilities," he reported. "They see it as leadership under pressure." The professional opportunities were exciting, but the personal growth was even more significant. I'd evolved from someone who accepted abuse to someone who fought it, from a victim to an advocate. The skills I'd developed weren't just professionally valuable, they were personally empowering. My apartment had become an unofficial consulting center for employees facing workplace abuse. People would stop by with documentation questions, legal concerns, or strategic advice about confronting exploitative managers. I'd helped develop evidence packages that led to 3 additional criminal prosecutions and dozens of civil settlements. "You've created a new career category," Margaret observed. During one of our regular check-ins, workplace justice advocate, employee rights strategist, internal fraud investigator. Companies are realizing they need people who can protect them from Marcus-type situations. The financial independence was transformative, but the sense of purpose was even better. Instead of just generating revenue for other people, I was helping vulnerable employees protect themselves from exploitation. Every successful case felt like justice multiplied. Dr. Roberts called it post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where surviving trauma actually increases someone's capabilities and confidence beyond their pre-trauma baseline. You didn't just recover from Marcus's abuse, she explained. You transformed it into strength that's helping other people avoid similar victimization. As I reviewed the various job offers spread across my dining room table, I realized that Marcus's theft had inadvertently created opportunities I'd never imagined. His crimes had forced me to develop expertise that was now in high demand, skills that companies were willing to pay premium salaries to acquire. The perfect employee had evolved into something much more valuable, the perfect advocate for other employees who needed someone to show them how to fight back effectively and win. The personal journal entry felt like a letter to my former self, as I wrote by the window of my new apartment, watching the sunset paint the park in golden light. 6 months had passed since Marcus's sentencing, and the transformation in my life seemed almost surreal when I tried to capture it in words. March 15th. Today I realized that I can't remember the last time I felt powerless. 6 months ago, I was a victim accepting systematic abuse because I thought I had no choice. Tonight, I'm writing job offer rejection letters because I have too many opportunities to choose from. The woman who was afraid to ask for her earned bonus is now teaching other people how to fight workplace exploitation and win. The reflection was prompted by a conversation with Dr. Roberts about measuring personal growth. She'd asked me to identify specific changes in my thinking, behavior, and self-perception since the Marcus situation concluded. The list was longer than I'd expected, and more profound than I'd realized while living through the changes. Confidence was the most obvious transformation. I no longer approached workplace interactions from a position of fear or gratitude for being employed. Instead, I evaluated opportunities based on mutual benefit and walked away from situations that didn't meet my standards. The desperate employee had evolved into a selective professional. You negotiate from strength now, Jennifer observed during one of our regular coffee meetings. When that recruiter tried to lowball you on salary, you didn't just accept it or feel grateful for the offer. You presented your market value data and walked away when they wouldn't meet it. 6 months ago, you would have taken whatever they offered. The documentation skills I'd developed during my Marcus investigation had become second nature. Every important conversation was recorded or summarized in writing. Every agreement was confirmed via email. Every performance metric was tracked and saved. I'd learned that protection comes from preparation, and preparation meant maintaining detailed records of everything. Trust but verify had become my professional motto. I'd learned to research companies before interviewing, to ask specific questions about financial controls and employee protections, and to evaluate managers based on their actions rather than their promises. Marcus had taught me that charismatic leaders could be the most dangerous exploiters. The strategic thinking abilities surprised me most. Confronting Marcus had required developing skills I'd never known I possessed: legal research, evidence compilation, tactical planning, and coalition building. These capabilities had applications far beyond workplace justice, and were now central to how I approached any complex challenge. You think like a lawyer now, Margaret noted during our final consultation about a new case I was helping with. You identify objectives, assess resources, anticipate obstacles, and develop contingency plans. Most people react emotionally to problems. You respond strategically. The network I'd built during the Marcus situation had become invaluable for my career development. Jake and his recovery contacts, Margaret and her legal colleagues, Linda from HR and her corporate connections, even the journalists who'd covered the case, all had become professional allies who understood my capabilities and referred opportunities. But the psychological growth was the most meaningful change. I'd learned to recognize manipulation, set boundaries, and respond to intimidation with documentation rather than fear. The people-pleasing employee who'd accepted abuse to avoid conflict had evolved into someone who demanded appropriate treatment and had the skills to enforce those demands. You've developed what psychologists call learned resourcefulness, Dr. Roberts explained. instead of learned helplessness, where people accept abuse because they believe they can't change it. You've learned that you have more power and options than you initially realized. The financial independence was transformative, but the emotional independence was more valuable. I no longer needed approval from authority figures to feel successful or worthy. My self-worth came from my capabilities and integrity, not from external validation or job security. Writing in my journal about the Marcus experience, I realized that his theft had been a catalyst for personal development that might never have occurred otherwise. His abuse had forced me to discover strengths I'd never known. I possessed and developed skills I'd never imagined needing. Today I helped Jennifer document wage theft at her previous job, advised Tom on salary negotiation strategies, and consulted with 3 different companies about implementing employee protection protocols. Marcus probably thought he was destroying my career when he stole my bonus. Instead, he accidentally created a career I never could have imagined. The most profound realization was about justice and personal power. For most of my life, I believed that justice was something that happened to you. Either you were treated fairly, or you weren't, and your only choice was to accept whatever treatment you received. Marcus had taught me that justice was something you created through preparation, documentation, and strategic action. The scared employee who accepted Marcus's theft because she needed the job would be amazed by the confident professional writing this journal entry. She'd be proud to know that her patience, documentation, and eventual courage would create opportunities beyond her wildest dreams. Looking back at the cramped studio apartment, the delayed bonus, and the casual dismissal of my financial needs, I felt grateful for the experience. Not grateful for the abuse that had been wrong and criminal, but grateful for discovering that I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I'd ever believed possible. The perfect employee had learned the most important lesson of all, that perfection wasn't about pleasing other people, but about protecting yourself and using your capabilities to help others do the same. The housewarming invitation felt like a celebration of more than just a new apartment as I addressed envelopes to colleagues, friends, and allies who'd supported me through the Marcus situation and its aftermath. Join Sarah Mitchell for food, drinks, and new beginnings, the invitation read, with my address printed in elegant script that would have been unaffordable 6 months earlier. My living room was transformed for the party actual furniture instead of folding chairs, art on the walls instead of bare paint, and a dining table that could seat 8 people comfortably. The contrast with my former studio apartment was stark and symbolic. This wasn't just a better living space. It was evidence of personal transformation and financial independence. Jake arrived first, carrying a bottle of champagne and a small wrapped gift. "Congratulations on the new place," he said, surveying the apartment with obvious satisfaction. "You've come a long way from that cramped studio where we planned the BMW recovery." The gift was a small bronze sculpture of scales of justice with an engraved nameplate reading, "To Sarah, for proving that truth and preparation can triumph over power and privilege." It was perfect for my desk at the new job I'd accepted with Pinnacle Sales Solutions, where I'd be leading their employee advocacy and workplace justice initiative. Linda from HR arrived with Jennifer and Tom, all carrying dishes for the potluck dinner. "This feels like a victory celebration," Linda observed, noting the relaxed confidence that had replaced my former anxiety. "6 months ago, you were fighting for a stolen bonus. Tonight, you're hosting a party for the people who helped. You win." Margaret Chun brought her law partner and 2 associates who were interested in learning about employee-initiated asset recovery strategies. The Marcus case had become a teaching example in employment law circles, demonstrating how thorough documentation and strategic thinking could overcome systematic workplace abuse. "Your case changed how we approach employee theft situations," Margaret's partner explained. "We now encourage clients to develop the kind of evidence package you assembled rather than just filing complaints and hoping for the best." Dr. Roberts attended with her husband, both curious to see the physical transformation that accompanied my psychological growth. Your apartment reflects your internal changes, she observed. Organized, spacious, confident, and welcoming. This space says, I know my worth and I'm not afraid to claim it. The most surprising guest was Marcus's former wife, accompanied by her sister and looking healthier than I'd seen her since the BMW theft made headlines. She'd requested the invitation through Jennifer, wanting to thank me for exposing the truth about her husband's crimes. I know this might seem strange, she said quietly during a private moment in my kitchen, but you saved me from a life built on lies. I was devastated when you took the car, but discovering that my husband was a criminal who'd stolen from his employees, I needed to know that truth. She'd used the divorce settlement to start her own business and was rebuilding her life with genuine support from friends who understood she'd been another victim of Marcus's deception. Thank you for being brave enough to fight back. It gave me permission to do the same. As the evening progressed, conversations naturally turned to the broader impact of the Marcus case. 3 other companies had implemented new financial controls based on our situation. 5 employees from different organizations had successfully exposed workplace theft using documentation strategies I'd shared. The ripple effects continued expanding through professional networks and industry associations. You've created a movement, Tom observed during the toasts that concluded the dinner. People are learning that they don't have to accept workplace abuse, that they can document problems and fight back effectively. Marcus thought he was stealing from one employee. Instead, he accidentally created an advocate for thousands of future victims. The professional recognition was gratifying, but the personal satisfaction was more meaningful. I'd evolved from someone who accepted unfair treatment to someone who taught others how to demand better. The skills forced on me by Marcus's abuse had become tools for helping vulnerable employees protect themselves. Raised his champagne glass for the final toast of the evening. To Sarah Mitchell, who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well and helping others do the same. Marcus stole your bonus, but you stole something much more valuable, his ability to hurt people without consequences. As guests departed, with promises to stay in touch and offers of future collaboration, I stood in my new living room and reflected on the journey from victim to victor. The scared employee who'd accepted Marcus's theft because she needed the job had evolved into someone who created opportunities rather than just accepting them. My phone buzzed with a text from a stranger. Hi, I got your contact from Jennifer. I think my boss is stealing from our commission pool, but I don't know how to prove it or what to do. Can you help? It was the 5th similar message this week, and each one reminded me that the work was far from over. I looked around my apartment one final time before turning off the lights at the justice scales on my side table. The job offers still scattered on my desk, and the windows that faced a park instead of a brick wall. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to help people who were experiencing what I'd survived. The perfect employee had learned the most important lesson of all, that sometimes standing up for yourself creates the power to stand up for everyone else who needs an advocate. Marcus had taught me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. And now it was time to share that strength with anyone who needed to learn how to fight back and win. Share your own workplace justice stories in the comments below, because everyone deserves to know that they have more power than they realize. And sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to document the truth and demand accountability.